We are speaking from the portal of I Am Still Human, and I'm very happy that we have with us Mr. Kiran Raju from Hyderabad, who is the founder and the CEO of Grene Robotics. He has been into the game of AI and robotics. In fact, there was a big demand from a very large number of subscribers of I Am Still Human. They wanted somebody who can give us a solution of AI and robotics for the nation. Because since the time the patriotism and nationalism has taken a very high pedestal in India, and there's a challenge of China, and there's a challenge of modernization. So everybody is looking for answers of AI, and those answers have got to come from within us. And in fact, I have been, as a journal, I have been on a lookout for somebody who can give us an indigenous solution. And gentlemen, here I welcome Mr. Kiran Raju, who is the solution on AI and robotics. Welcome to you, Mr.
Thank
Kiran
you,
Raju.
sir. Thank you for the kind introduction, General sir. It's a pleasure to be here. Um, I am a patriot at heart, and I think what is happening right now is something that is dear to me to bring in some sort of revolution in the borders of India. I would say so. Happy to be here.
I'm so happy to know, and I've seen you also, I've met you also, and your patriotism is absolutely pure and it is absolutely civilizational deep. In fact, Mr. Kiran, we as a armed forces, we from the point of view of the national security are looking at transformation, modernization, restructuring, and reorganization.
Yes.
And in front of us, we have the challenge of primary security threat, that is China. And China has made a lot of progress on artificial intelligence. In fact, in some quarters, some information, one does hear that China is almost leveling or challenging America. And one thing is definite, that in case we got to transform ourselves as a nation and as the Indian Army, then the solution is AI and robotics. I am aware about your background that it is in 2002 you had gone to Carnegie. You were focused on bioinformation, on computer engineering, and you're practically from 2011. In fact, last 20 years you've been on the topic. Last 15 years you already delivered on the aspect of AI and robotics. One is aware that your keywords of life are autonomous and disruptive technology. I would request for the viewers to know that what have you done on AI and robotics till now?
Sure, sir. I think it's been a long journey. I'll try to summarize it to whatever possible. So, like you said, sir, 2004, I graduated from Carnegie Mellon, I think, which is number one in a school in robotics in the world. And at that time, we are working in autonomous cars. We are working in the lab in 2004. And even till today, autonomous cars are not commercial. So there is so much research and development that has to go into a technology before it is ready for large scale deployment. So what I have been doing over the last 10 years is our Green Robotics has been my brainchild, where we said we will spend that 10 years to research and develop an indigenous artificial intelligence, and also a robotics platform that will help not only uh, India in the enterprise side, but also the defense and the government side. So I think one of the things I would like to explain a little bit. I think people always confuse AI and robotics and what do they really play. So for me, at least, when I say AI, I mean a system that can take decisions on its own, right? And it every time the next decision is smarter than the previous one. So it's a system that is learning and is taking decisions on its own. Now, robotics just plays a role of ensuring that those decisions turn into actions. So we have been developing a platform for the last 10 years called Green Operating System. And today we are applying that in enterprises as an enterprise operating system, defense as defense operating system, and even smart cities as a city operating system, right? So, so I believe that the future is like when a city is completely operated by AI. And I would say the same thing for defense. Today, if we are having these skirmishes across our border, uh, even someone tries to come into our border, they should be met by an autonomous force, not by a force that is human, where we have to bear with casualties. Right? The second it's an autonomous force, there is no question of a discussion or an argument. Right? It is either, it is the autonomous force is deciding whether are you in territory or you are not, right? Or how to apprehend you, or how to stop you, right? So I think that is the future when I say autonomous system for a defense system. That's what I mean, and it applies not only in ground, air, cyber. There are 10 areas where I think AI has to play a role, defend in the future, because the opposite side is preparing for it, and we need to also. So I
Um,
hope that answers.
Mr. Kiran, you just not talked about the 10 areas, and I totally agree with you that future warfare, future technology. In fact, when one looks at the elements of power and elements of war, like diplomacy, information, media, economy, politics, public, one of the most important, the leading element of power is technology. And I
Yeah.
think, and in technology today, AI is absolutely in the top. You talked about the 10 areas. Can you just briefly tell us what these 10 areas that just not talked about?
No, I said 10 years
Okay,
that we
okay,
developed
okay.
on technology, but I think if I had to pick areas on which AI is to be developed, um, I think AI is going to go in every little thing, from a coffee mug uh, to a spaceship. All of them are going to be run by AI. Even keeping your coffee hot for a certain amount of time, for the right amount of time might be AI driven. But however, when Green Robotics talks about AI, we are talking about operational decision making in real time, right?
Uh,
That's
you're right. Mr. Kiran, I have as a journal, I've got a DNA and the blood of an army man. I always think about security.
yes,
And
right.
what I pick up from you that this autonomous aspect, and in fact, in one of my interaction with you earlier, so
Yeah,
beautifully you asked me a very key question. You asked
yeah,
me, is army about resources, process, and time? And
yes,
my instant answer to you was yes. Indian armed forces is about resources, human resource, material resource. It is about the processes, drills and processes, about
yes.
methodology of doing things, and it is about the time progression that you
Yes.
have a challenge in front of you, you got to finish. In fact, for us, the challenge is seeking a target, that is a seeker or the sensor, putting it through a decision loop, OODA loop, observe, orient, decision, action, and then strike. And in fact, in case entire thing can be put on autonomous route, like what you
Correct.
said, by a disruptive technology, by AI, how can you help the national security and armed forces on this aspect?
Sir, I see the challenge multifold, whether it is in defense enterprise or government sector. Let me explain the challenge, sir. The challenge is information, intelligence, right? And today, the most powerful, for example, like you said, sir, if I have to deploy resources in a particular area, that decision is taken using maybe 10 bits of data from various army commanders, or wherever the data is coming from. Now, the second we connect the system, we connect an AI system to the defense uh, points, the data collection you can multiply into 100. So if you're today looking at 10 fields of data, then you're looking at 1,000 fields of data, right? And then you are taking those 1,000 bits of data and trying to take a decision in real time to change resources strategically, Today, what happens is that we probably make a strategy once in 24 hours, because the data comes back to us in 24 hours, and then we realize, okay, this is what is happening, so we need to change our strategy to do this and allocate resources here and at a time of, I'm saying at a time of whether it is border protection or whether it is at a time of conflict, it doesn't matter. But those decisions, what I say is that those decisions should be taken every minute, so that because you can send drones out there, you can send so many robots out there, collect the information you need, and then take a decision every minute, because that will save you substantial amount of lives. That 1 minute decision, which is based on enough photographic evidence
Mr. Raju,
or camera evidence, will change lives.
Mr. Kiran, can I ask you some direct questions?
Yes, sir.
We have to transform the entire setup in the sense that we got to walk over towards the artificial intelligence and robotics in the Indian Armed Forces.
Right.
Let me just start. Can our entire intelligence network be changed onto the AI, artificial intelligence? One. Secondly, can our personal data management can it be changed into the AI? Can the our decision support system be changed into the AI? Can this communication from seeker to decision maker to the strike can be put it in the loop of AI?
Sir, I absolutely, I think there is a requirement to upgrade the entire infrastructure of data networks to be able to implement AI, right? Sir, I think AI also will be, at least for defense, will be a singular conscious system, so that it is connected to all the defense resources and take decisions substantially quickly. However, to get there, we have to start from the ground level, which are if I would do it, if I had to do it, and I think that's what partly we are working on, is focus on the resources. Let us say today Indian Army has a few million jawans, this many vehicles, that many assets, this many material, right? We take the lowest maximum resources and start from there and start collecting data from them in real time, right? So that is how you would. The once you collect the data in real time, you have the ability for AI to step in and take smart decisions about it. And the challenge today is that if you deploy AI prematurely, right, without the right data infrastructure underneath, it will give bad decisions. See, it's a decision-making system. Not all AIs are good, just like all human beings. Everything cannot be good, right? So there are good and bad. So
Uh, Kiran, you are so frank, you are so forthright, you are so deep, and behind the depth is your experience and achievement. In fact, to be honest, I would like to share the biggest strength of Indian Armed Forces is secrecy and security. Well,
correct.
they are strength also, they are weakness also. I want to know right in the beginning that your system caters for the security.
Yes, sir. I think security is of primal importance. Security both ways. One way is that outside outside systems should not interact with our system, and also our system should not interact with outside systems. Right. So I think both sides we have to ensure that there is a very strong, almost iron vault that can protect, because the second we connect everything to a system, the vulnerability of the system is also very high.
Having a problem of being overcautious on security, what I
Yes.
learned from you that your entire process caters for security in totality. Is it based
Correct.
on quantum engineering or something?
No, sir. I think the security, see, quantum engineering is only required when we need to do that high level of processing. But there are technologies today, like blockchain, so that a decision cannot be taken by a singular system also. You need 10 systems to agree to the same decision. So 10, if you have multiple instances of an AI, all AIs have to agree to the decision for it to actually execute. So even if one system is compromised, let us say we have one system in Hyderabad which might be compromised, but if the other state systems don't come to the same conclusion on the decision, we already know that the system is compromised. So we have to take measures, how they use in the financial world, right? Blockchain is used substantially in the financial world because a trade decision, without a authority um, to tick it off is very tricky. It's exactly so. There are a lot of technologies underneath. I would say like blockchain is one of them, but again, it applies to what kind of a decision. For example, if I'm talking about nuclear launch versus sending a drone, these two decisions are two different things, right? We don't need the security that measures in one as much as the other. So I think every layer has to be thought of decision making and how to actually use the right technology to secure that decision.
And
And
uh,
yeah,
and Mr. Kiran, I want to know from you: is your entire process indigenous? Because
yes,
because Prime Minister of the nation has said that our future steps, our aim is make in India. So I want to check with you: is it indigenous?
yes, sir. We have all my team that we have worked in the last 10 years, almost 80% of the team are still with the company, and they are all Indian, and we all live in India. And we have developed every line of code, every piece of funding, everything is Indian. So I would say we are as indigenous as it gets.
I'm
We
so
have
happy
no,
hearing
we
that.
have no dollar. There's no dollar investment in here, so
I'm so happy
or
because
or yen or any other kind of currency. So
I'm
so
so
very
happy.
well.
I'm so happy that you have cleared two of my doubts. One was regarding security, and second is regarding indigenous. Now I come to a very hard-hitting question to you, Mr. Kiran. Uh, just list out three achievements of yours which you've practically done on the ground.
Okay. So the practical, our biggest AI implementation, I would say, is in the terms of operating system for one of the India's largest telco, um, and basically their decisions about which resources to apply where is taken by the system today, right? So, for example, if the second I get an order for some kind of a internet connection, there are about 20 decisions that have to be taken for that order to go through, and all those decisions are taken by the system saying that okay, based on my information, the nearest person is this person, so I think maybe he should be the right one, and his skill levels are so and so, and this is his level of SIM cards that are already on him, and so you have to think about it like the system knows exactly what this person is, where he is, what he is doing, and assigns the job to that person to be able to complete it in the fastest time possible and with the least amount. I think one thing, the difference is that enterprises are, I'm taking the enterprise example because some of the defense work we are doing cannot be talked about. It's I would not, I'm not at liberty to share some of the autonomous systems that we are building for the government, but enterprise is a decently open space where we are applying AI. So, like I'm saying, it's the ability to enterprise is always the base principle of enterprise is to save money, and I think the base principle of defense is to save lives, right?
Absolutely,
So,
so beautifully
so
put.
that's how the decision has to be made, right? So the decision might be different because the priority is different, right? But it is the same thing underneath.
You are a very humble person, but I want to know from you what wonder you did for ONGC as far as the medical cover and system is concerned. Please tell me in detail about it.
Sir, I think ONGC is one of those unique propositions. Um, Again, is coming from the standpoint of they have, and today of all, at times of COVID, healthcare is something which should not take 48 hours for a doctor to respond. So we have built a system that will respond to a beneficiary or patient in real time what they need to do based on the inputs they give into the system, right? Based on their history, based on their insurance, based on their nearest hospital, based on their location, based on all the data we are available about the beneficiary. literally, if you use our, I mean, ONGC is using our prototyping our application to be able to raise a health request, and within minutes you will get an approval to, it will tell you either go to the nearest hospital or go to the nearest pharmacy and take this medication, or I think this requires a certain set of approvals from multiple doctors, and it will immediately connect you to those doctors, right? So I think it almost is like a virtual uh, chief medical operator, right? So I think when we go to enterprises, we build their chief operating officer virtually. So when we say this is the AI, that's what is the AI? It's your virtual chief operating officer, right? So that's how we build for the chief medical officer in GC. So it helps you get your medical prescription in and do whatever is needed within minutes, which earlier used to take
Mr.
days.
Kiran, Mr. Kiran, it's so heartening to hear that you changed the system which used to take weeks and days and months, and you brought it to the level of minutes. My compliments to you. But can I throw a challenge at you as a veteran, as a former soldier and a former journal? Can I throw a challenge at you? Look, we have a system of ECHS, ex-serviceman health system, which is there.
Yes.
We've got dependency of about, I think, 26 lakhs veterans, and if you include the dependency of the other dependent, it is 52 lakh. Our
Right.
system is also still based on an old archive system of cards and permissions and delays, and there are. It has not progressed the way it should have. I have personally have been the adjutant general of Indian Army. I know the problem. Actually, one is looking for a very efficient system where the whole process, which takes months and months, will take weeks, will take so much of delay, cause so much of pain, and I will
Yeah.
say inefficiency. Can you take this challenge of ECHS to be converted into AI? This is my challenge to you. Can you do it?
Yes, sir. Absolutely. We'll be happy to do it. It's that.
Can I walk up to my chief of army staff, my CDS, my three chiefs, naval chief and air force chief, and the MD of ECHS, and say that here is a gentleman who has experience of 15 years, who's got an entire indigenous process, who's got uh, who has understood. He's already done the job on ONGC for this medical cover, and he'll provide. What do you want the army to communicate to you?
I would say that, sir, there are so many things and I can do at ONGC in an army, but I choose this particular uh, healthcare side of it because I understand one very basic principle, sir. The principle is that when it comes to healthcare, whether you're CEO or whether you're the watchman, it doesn't matter, right? When you need it and your family needs it, you need it right then. It's not something that you can wait for, and that is why I think that is a core area we pick. Whether it's for ONGC or Army, I'll be more than happy to implement that such a solution because I think it touches the lives of people, and I think that is required for people to appreciate AI in today's day and age. Because one of the reasons why I find because people fear AI, saying that is this going to take my job or is this going to do something that it's not really. All it does is all it does is take give that confidence to people, and I think I find no better way to give confidence than when it can answer your healthcare problems, right? So I think sure, I'll take the challenge on, sir. Whenever you tell me,
Uh,
please
Mr.
do. I'll
Kiran,
be happy to. I'll be
Mr.
happy to
Kiran,
come down and do it myself.
Mr. Kiran, I really appreciate your sense of patriotism for the armed forces. And the first challenge which you've taken is regarding ECHS, bringing it on the plane of artificial intelligence. I suppose uh, that from the army you would need a letter of intent. I also, knowing
Yes.
you, that it is no cost, no commitment, no obligation type of an initial engagement. You'll produce a prototype. Am I correct on these three terms?
Absolutely, sir. I think it would be a no cost, no obligation commitment from our side to do that, right? To show how this technology works.
I'm Mr. Kiran here on this video conference with you. I give you a word that I'm going to walk to straight to Chief of Army Staff, to the CDS, to the MD ECHS, and give this communication to them. And I would
Please.
also ensure that this is heard by PMO, NSA, RM, HM, because this mantra of yours of
Yes.
providing AI related healthcare should not only benefit the armed forces, but it should benefit the paramilitary forces, CAPF, and everybody. Now I come to my second query from you.
Yes, sir.
Uh, how can, because in the armed forces we got a large inventory, we deal with a lot of resources, we deal with the supplies, etc. and all. Can those things be put on the AI platform?
Everything. I would say yes. I would say anything that like sir, it's like you have earlier mentioned what I've told you in the past. It's like a process, resources. How do I allocate resources that will keep my resources either safe uh, as the primary parameter, or make them the most efficient as the secondary parameter. And we can, sir. I don't see any gaps in applying the same theory. And I think that's where I'm coming from, saying from the standpoint, AI is one of those technologies that has to be indigenous to a country because it just is connected to way too many systems to be able to let any person out of the country to be able to manage that. And secondly, um, it does give 10x return. It will make it more efficient. I think we have had these discussions in the past also. I think where today's war is that first you disable the enemy, you know, and that's where AI really kicks in because you cannot disable it because it's a system. You know, you might disable a few people in the you just removing a few key people does not change anything in the system. It still operates autonomously, right? So I think that is whether that applies to healthcare, border security, logistics. It is irrelevant where it applies, but the principle of the operating system is the same.
Mr. Kiran, to me, the way you're talking, I have been a journal, I've been Deputy Chief Army Staff, I commanded a corps, but your words are so appealing to me when you talk about disabling the enemy, disruptive technology. They look very powerful and strategic to me. My compliments to you. I also want to know from you that you can you provide the special operation centers? Operation centers where a lot of resources, subordinate formations, subordinate units, so many unmanned sensors, so many other, can they be plugged onto operation center type of a platform where all of them can get together and the decision maker can take decision. Can you provide something of that nature?
We are already working on those projects, sir. To be truthful, and unfortunately, like I said, I cannot reveal a lot of them. But there are almost 4 or 5 different defense-related projects that we are working on. And I think one thing I have not maybe mentioned in this call is we as a family we have been my dad has been working for the Indian defense for 40 years.
Great,
uh, yeah, so we
great.
have, you know, there is deep rooted patriotism in us, and we are already working on some of these projects in R&D scale with multiple partnerships within the Indian defense, and that's what we want to do. We don't want to focus on other things outside the country. The enterprise, we don't mind going around the world, but I think defense is going to be only India forever.
Mr. Kiran, it is very appealing to me that your father has served for 40 years uh, for the armed forces. He's provided his services. He's given his support to the armed forces. Please convey my jai hind to him and my reverence to him, firstly.
I will.
Secondly, I want to know that I was reading it that you have started a virtual office because now what has happened in Corona, nobody is going to the offices of bricks and mortar. Nobody is going to the buildings to the office. Everybody is sitting in their home and running office from there. And this concept of virtual office is something. In fact, you're going to shake up the state industry when people will not build office, but they'll go for virtual office. Can you explain this virtual office to me?
Yes, sir, I will. But I would like to first I make it clear that it was not me who shook up the industry. It's Corona. Like, it was not me. Like, it was Corona that did it. This was not pre-planned in any way. Uh, but it was Corona that changed the world. And I can't think of a world like how it used to be. The post-Corona world is going to require technology to be its backbone. And virtual office is one of those projects where we are saying how do we distribute cities, how do we decongest cities, how do we make sure that people around India have a job, and it's not just in the cities. Um, so the virtual office project is something to do with that, where let us say I might be working from the remotest place in India, and today the internet has reached there. So and there are qualified engineers there who probably don't need to migrate to a city to get a job, right? They can execute their job from their pod, or a work pod, or a common office space in the tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 cities, right? So the virtual office was conceptualized based on that. But now Corona has accelerated the whole equation to something like now everybody needs it. And commercial space is getting disrupted because I never understood the reason why someone has to travel 1.5 hour in the morning and 1.5 hour in the evening to do their job, right? That's 3 hours in a day. And I'm sure 80% of people who are in a commercial building cannot afford the real estate at least an hour away from that commercial building, right? So the economics of itself are a little, um, I would say, wasteful of resources, right? And I think that's
Mr. Kiran, it is so illuminating listening to you. But I want to know from you, uh, what is the content of secrecy or security which you have embedded in the virtual system, virtual office? Can armed forces also make use of it and all? That's my query.
absolutely. I think, sir, when we build this system, we build it on first of all, it is, like I said, again, 100% indigenously built. We do not use or store or transmit anything outside India. And even with most of our enterprise clients, but I think defense network is something that we can very easily implement again because it's a completely private network, right? And we can absolutely implement it there. And I think the defense does need it because we I think going forward we have to understand that people have to be defense forces have to be autonomous, right? And this is one of those pieces where even if something happens, natural disaster, whatever it might be, as long as I have electricity and internet, people can amass the force and ensure that everybody is doing what they're supposed to be doing, right? So I think, and video calling has become the way to communicate today, and that's what another thing that the virtual office brings in, right? There are so many elements where of secrecy, security, encryption, transcription that are embedded in the system. I would say today that that is more secure than your regular physical office because I would say the weakest link in any kind of data leak is the people, you know.
No, so beautifully put, Mr. Kiran. In fact, I'm finding whatever you're speaking for me is so charming, and there's a reason for it, because the Indian Army wants to transform itself. it is looking at the future warfare. Future warfare where AI, robotics, remoteness, nanotechnology, swarming, autonomous, big data, analytics, cyber, space, net centricity. So many things are in the immediately in front of us. But at the same time, very humbly, I want to say that still we have resolved borders, unresolved borders with China, Pakistan. Still, we got internal terrorism, internal security problem. But the biggest strength that the India has got is the boots, it's the soldier. But at the same time, I will say that the threat also and the soldier also have got to get related to technology in a big way. And listening to you, I can see some of the seeds like ECHS. I can see seeds that the manpower planning, where officers' data is kept in the army headquarters. That one, our regimental centers where the data of all soldiers are kept, even of the veterans. Those areas, our Army Ordnance Corps, which handles the inventory, our Army Supply Corps, which handles supplies, FOL, are so many other institutions, organizations which are handling data as principality. So I think they all need to listen to you. In fact, I would also request, I'm very happy our founder, Mr. Vivek Mehra, spotted you. He said that everyone is asking for solution to AI, and that's how I think a gem like you, a diamond like you, has been spotted.
Thank you, sir.
And
Thank you.
on your shoulders, you got a big responsibility for the nation. And we
Yeah.
will definitely advertise your Twitter site, your email, your office details, and I would request that after we do the interactive portion with the what I committed to you with the Chief of Army Staff, with the Adjutant General, with the Deputy Chief of Army Staff, with the MD be prepared. I want you to come to Delhi and please give your presentation to all the key decision makers because I feel what you have spoken was the hunger inside the armed forces. We've got four challenges: transformation, modernization, restructuring, and reorganization. But your thought, your mantra of you said green OS, green operating system, I think is the solution for all these things. And we want to know a little bit more about the person Kiran beyond your 15 years
Company.
on AI. I want to know what are your other interests in life.
Sir, I spend my time when I do get time. I end up. So last year I went for a long trek into Himachal Pradesh.
Beautiful.
So I try to either take a motorcycle and then go into the remote areas where there is no mobile connectivity or beautiful. I think India is a beautiful country, so I spend my time traveling to remote areas. I think that's my interest. Forests, mountains, um, beaches, not as much. It's okay. I can afford. Yeah, and I think other than that, I indulge myself. So actually, I am a computer scientist and I'm a programmer and I'm an engineer myself. Uh, I spend most of my time tinkering with electronics, robots, robotic hand, whatever that I can get my hands on, so that I understand what they can and cannot do, right? So yeah, I think then the third, and I would say this is the most important, is obviously my family, right? So which I spend time. So I have already.
Mr. Kiran, I want to know you also done skydiving?
Yes, yes.
Tell us something about skydiving that you did.
Well, this was in end of college days, and I wanted to get a skydiving permit. So I went and took the classes. So there's about 48 hours of classes. Then you take an exam. After that, you have to do about 18 jumps to get a license to actually do it by yourself. Um, and I did that. I did the course, and but I never, I would say not, I did not continue it beyond that because it did not. It was nice when I did it, but I would not say that
And
it's a adrenaline rush.
Uh, Mr.
Somewhere
Kiran,
adventure sports is there.
Mr. Kiran, I find that you really love nature. I was also seeing your website where you taken the example of honeybees and AI you combined with it. Can you tell us something about that aspect, please?
So I will apply it. I will apply that in a military sense, and I will explain it to you. Um, Maybe 5 years from now, if there is any kind of border inclusion, if we have to build a robot that is suited for that kind of a scenario, I would take the example of a spider. A spider is amazing in its territory, right? Wherever it has put the web, there is no one escaping it, right? All it takes is one step on the web, and the spider, which is probably like hundreds of steps away, immediately knows that, okay, there is somebody who has stepped somewhere, and it will be its first response, right? So, how do we use the principles of nature, which are already there, to apply and to build technology around it, right? So, and think of it in a human mind also, spider does build a scary picture, no matter what, right? So there is so much that is there, and it has 8 eyes which can see in all directions. So it's
You
all
know,
of this
Mr.
is already
Kiran,
there,
Mr.
right?
Kiran, it is so enthusing hearing you. And to be very honest, if I've got to describe you in 5 words, then Mr. Kiran Raju, the founder and the CEO of Grene Robotics, who's got depth of 15 years into the subject, into practicality. 5 words that if I have to describe you, you love nature, you love humanity, you love machine learning and deep learning, and you love
Yes.
technology, and you love the words autonomous and disruptive
Yes.
technology. In fact, with these 5 words, I think in you I see a genius. I see a
Thank you, sir.
huge strength of India. And my request to you is, please, and I can see that your father was with he did so much of service for the army for last 40 years. First, give my reference to him.
I
Secondly,
will.
I want you to take on your shoulders the the very quest to help national security, Indian armed forces to come up on the aspect of AI, robotics, and the future technology that we are looking at. Indeed, for me, today is a great day. I spoke to you, and actually, I must share with you that I'm an infantry officer. पैदल सेना का हूं मैं और but one has always loved BA technology. I'm a BSc otherwise, and thank God I was able to talk something on technology with you and
No,
with a
I mean,
giant
sir,
like you, the
it
giant
is
like you.
it is great. One thing I have to always appreciate is you have captured the essence of what I said very easily, and that's not common, sir. And I think that's great that we need more and more people to see that, to be able to actually make that transformational change for India, and that's what we are here for, right? And the more people who take that to look at it at a broader scale, at a philosophical scale, and see that we achieve that. I see that you do have that, and I don't know. I guess it comes naturally to you, which is amazing. So
And
to comment that.
with this, we walk towards the conclusion, Mr. Kiran Raju, and on behalf of our founder, Mr. Vivek Mehra, on behalf of all the listeners of I Am Still Human, on behalf of the armed forces, on behalf of all the soldiers, on behalf of all the Indians who are looking at the quest to transform India through the route of AI and robotics, my Jai Hind to you. Thank you so much for joining
Thank you,
us.
sir. Thank you for your time. Thank you for everything.